This morning, United States of chaos. America's race riots intensify. Rioting crowds in some 75 cities, now looting and torching, many of them heavily armed. George Floyd's brother leads a prayer vigil in Minneapolis at the site where it all began. A major development surrounding a Queensland COVID-19 patient. Test confirms he didn't have the virus before he died. And May housing stats are out. We tell you which states proved to be most resilient. That's next.
This is 7 News with Edwina Bartholomew.
We begin this morning with scenes of both solidarity and savagery across America as protests unfold across the country. Curfews have been extended in major cities as looting and vandalism take over. A major clean-up is now underway as authorities call for unity.
Overcome by grief where it all began. George Floyd's brother calling for calm while visiting a makeshift memorial in Minneapolis.
If I'm not over here blowing up stuff, if I'm not over here messing up my community, then what are y'all doing?
Floyd's son Quincy echoing that message in Texas.
Tearing up things, it's not going to solve anything. My dad is in peace, and we have to be the ones that deal with all this stress, and it's going to be kind of tough to get over this day by day.
His comments during a peaceful protest, a far cry from this. Harrowing new video shows a tragedy narrowly averted. Protesters scattering as a tanker driver barreled down a closed highway. Incredibly, nobody was killed. The driver is now under arrest, with police still working out if it was deliberate. Across the country, shop owners are taking stock following widespread looting and vandalism. Despite protests against police brutality, the use of force to quell crowds has been widespread. But many stand with protesters.
We're all here together, okay?
Curfews have been brought in across major cities, but it hasn't stopped some. In the nation's capital, fire broke out in the basement of St John's Cathedral, also known as the Church of the Presidents. Scenes like this unfolding across a nation divided. Rachel Sullivan, 7 News.
Demonstrations have spread around the globe with thousands marching across major capital cities. In Dublin, crowds gathered outside the United States Embassy chanting Black Lives Matter and holding signs. Thousands also lined the streets of Auckland, while in London, what started as peaceful protests turned violent with dozens arrested.
Scenes from across the Atlantic triggering frustration in the heart of London. An otherwise peaceful anti-racism protest ending abruptly for some. In a country where gatherings of more than 6 people outside are still banned, thousands felt compelled to defy the rules.
Justice for a lot of black people that have died globally, not just in the UK, as you can see behind you. This stuff continues every day. This stuff is everyday life. It's not just today. What you see today happens every single day.
Marching from Trafalgar Square, pausing at Downing Street. Their final destination, the US Embassy. These protesters have been on the streets of London today for hours. Of the handful of arrests, some have been for breaching COVID-19 legislation, others for assaulting police, and there's more demonstrations planned throughout the week. There were rallies too in Copenhagen and for a second day in Berlin. This mural of George Floyd painted on a former part of the Berlin Wall, an international symbol of division.
It's just constantly. The justice system, there is no justice system. Till justice is served, we won't stop rioting.
In London, Sarah Greenhalgh, 7 News.
Free childcare is set to end as early as next month as parents are being assured they'll still receive some support. Political reporter Olivia Leeming is in Canberra with all the details. Olivia, they're likely to pay less in fees than before the pandemic, which is good news.
Good morning, Eddie. Yes, we are expecting an announcement on the future of the government's childcare scheme later this week. The free childcare that was offered as a result of coronavirus to help parents, that's due to expire later this month, the 23rd of June. And it's understood parents will have to start paying for childcare as early as July, but the fees, as you said, won't be quite as high as what they were before the pandemic, with subsidies set to be increased under a hybrid model expected to be unveiled by the Education Minister. It could involve relaxing the activity test, which requires parents to be working or studying, and parents may only be charged for the days that their child actually attends care, not for when they're absent. Childcare centres, though, urge not to dramatically increase fees, possibly until the end of the year while this support package is in place, though there is mounting pressure on the government to extend free childcare indefinitely despite the significant cost to the taxpayer. The government maintains no final decision has been made quite yet, but has always emphasised that this relief was going to be temporary. Eddie.
OK, thank you, Olivia. New cash handouts to build homes are expected to be part of another national stimulus package later this week. The Treasurer isn't revealing details yet, but acknowledges the construction sector could be heading for a cliff, and that would place over 1 million jobs at serious risk.
Cheers. Not quite a sculler in the Bob Hawke tradition.
I can't put it all down in one.
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg celebrates the easing of restrictions, getting on the beers before lunch.
Don't know how productive my rest of my day will be.
Preparing to serve up a new round of stimulus for the residential building industry.
There's more than 1 million Australians who are employed in construction.
The government is considering grants of between $20,000 and $40,000 for new house construction.
It is about creating jobs and supporting jobs in our residential construction sector.
A sector predicting a 50% drop in new home builds in the second half of the year, putting the jobs of tradies and their apprentices at risk.
I've got 2 words for the Prime Minister. Hurry up.
The issue will go to Cabinet on Wednesday, with an announcement expected later this week. The government's also defending its early access to super scheme, with Labor seizing on analysis suggesting $1 billion of the $15 billion already drawn down has gone on gambling.
We don't want to see it open to abuse, and because of the government's incompetence, that's exactly what's happening.
It's their money. It's their money. I don't go around telling people how to spend their own money.
The government says most of the money is being spent stimulating the economy. Mark Riley, 7 News.
Concerns are growing over the reliability of COVID-19 testing. It's been revealed a 30-year-old Central Queensland man did not have the virus before he died. Last week, Queensland's Premier and the state's health officer held a press conference to confirm he died and had tested positive for the virus. Public Health scrambled to test all his close contacts. They all came back negative. His family has been contacted by the coroner. Authorities are yet to determine how he died. The states are under increasing pressure to dump stamp duty taxes to encourage new home buyers as the property market records its first monthly fall in 12 months. According to CoreLogic, values dropped by just under 0.5% nationally in May. In Sydney, prices fell by 0.4%. They were down almost a full percent in Melbourne. Brisbane suffered a slight dip of 0.1%. Adelaide was one of the few markets to record a rise, while Perth dropped by 0.6%. Queensland tourism industry is expected to launch protests this morning over the state's border shutdown, called Toot for Tourism. There are rallies being organised in 3 different parts of the state. On the Gold Coast, locals have taken to their cars to demand Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk reopen the state to southern tourists. The latest figures estimate a loss of $500 million for Gold Coast businesses alone if the border remains closed for another 2 months. In other news now this morning, a massive clean-up will get underway in parts of South Australia today after strong winds and heavy rain left a trail of destruction. Residents of a northern suburb say it felt like a mini tornado ripped through, while a shack on the Fleurieu Peninsula was left without its roof. The wild weather has eased, however the lower south-east coast is being urged to prepare for more strong winds today. Surfers have saved a teenage boy from drowning in Perth's southwest. Holden Ross was making the most of a break between the ocean and Margaret River when he got into trouble. It was almost 20 seconds before a surfer dived in after realising Holden needed help. Then another man helps pull him to safety.
I just remember being under and getting rolled around and then getting out and laying on the sand. I've seen Holden take some heavy wipeouts, so I've never felt that afraid ever in my life.
Surf Life Saving WA says the influx of water from recent storms has made the beach even more unpredictable. A smash and skid hit and run has been caught on dash cam in Western Sydney. It captured the moment a vehicle raced around a corner and ploughed into the back of a parked car at Harris Park. Thankfully, no one was inside that vehicle. The hoon driver then sped off, leaving a trail of smoke. Firefighters were called to clean up an oil leak and police are still searching for that driver. Legal proceedings have started against the captain of the ship that lost 50 containers bound for Melbourne. The shipmaster has been charged with discharging garbage into the sea and failing to ensure the APL England did not cause pollution. Containers have been washing up on beaches along the New South Wales coast after toppling overboard in a storm 10 days ago. There's some good news this morning for asthma sufferers, with the popular inhaler now much cheaper. The medication Symbicort, an anti-inflammatory reliever used to control and prevent asthma symptoms, is listed on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme for mild sufferers. The change means savings of more than $30 a treatment. A fire crew in Sydney's southwest were called in for a very unusual and delicate rescue operation. That up there is Gladys the koala, who's pregnant. The alarm was raised after the adventurous mum-to-be was spotted in a tree close to a busy road in Macquarie Fields.
Gladys was her name. A little bit agitated, but she came down in the end and the guys did a great job.
After her safe removal, Gladys was taken back to her colony, where we're pleased to report she is resting comfortably this morning. Checking Tuesday's weather for you now. Sunny in Brisbane and 21 degrees. A possible shower in Sydney with a top of 17. Partly cloudy in Canberra. A shower or two in Melbourne and 15 degrees. A shower or two in Hobart and Adelaide. Partly cloudy in Perth with a top of 22. And sunny in Darwin and 33 degrees. Next on 7 Early News, residents in El Salvador have woken up to devastation today as Tropical Storm Amanda causes flooding and mudslides across the country. And history-making rendezvous at the International Space Station. That's all next on 7's Early News.
Bob and Doug, welcome.
At least 15 people have died in El Salvador as the tropical storm continues to bring major flooding and landslides. Tropical Storm Amanda has brought relentless rain to parts of the country, washing away hundreds of homes. Thousands of residents have been evacuated and are seeking refuge in emergency shelters. El Salvador's president has declared a 15-day state of emergency. Countries around the world are slowly emerging from lockdown. In the UK, students return to school, while London's famous Camden Market was also open for business. In Italy, the Colosseum in Rome reopened after a 3-month closure, as did the Vatican museums. And the warm weather in the Netherlands saw locals flock to the beach as restrictions were eased in time for a major public holiday. A Brisbane man has undergone world-first brain surgery after a motorcycle accident nearly claimed his life in Vietnam. Using 3D printing, doctors were able to replace a section of his skull, which will soon turn to bone.
With my new skull, I have actual bone regrowing in there. I don't have to wear my helmet all the time anymore, which is very nice.
The new skull fragment eliminates the risk of infection, and Brodie has now returned home. Checking finance news for you now. The Dow Jones is trading higher. The Nasdaq also on the rise. In London, the FT 100 added and Germany's DAX lost. Closer to home, Japan's Nikkei closed at 186 points higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng gained. The All Ords in the ASX 200 rose. And on the commodities market, gold is trading at $1,737 an ounce. Oil is just over $35 a barrel. The Aussie dollar is buying just under 70 US cents, around 73 Japanese yen, and around $1.08 New Zealand. 2 American astronauts are aboard the International Space Station this morning, arriving on the first commercial rocket launched from the US. The SpaceX mission took 19 hours to reach its target, a first big step to the moon and beyond.
420 kilometres above the Earth, a delicate manoeuvre heralds a new dawn in space exploration.
Soft capture complete.
The SpaceX Dragon capsule's arrival at the International Space Station was the first private rocket to carry astronauts into space. The first manned American launch since the shuttle program ended, delivering Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley safely.
Bob and Doug, welcome to the International Space Station.
It was the end of a 19-hour journey from Florida.
Liftoff.
The Falcon 9 rocket blasted the crew out of the atmosphere. Then the spacesuits came off and they gave viewers a tour of their tin can far above the world.
It has a touch display screen.
And revealed they'd brought their kids' toys for the ride.
I know that both of our sons are pretty happy about that, with their pet dinosaur making it into orbit.
They flew the ship manually until they got close to the space station, reverting to autopilot for docking. Both craft hurtling along at 22 times the speed of sound.
One effort that we can show for the ages in this dark time that we've had over the past several months to kind of inspire.
So much gravity in the weightlessness of space.
Work hard and look what you can accomplish.
A message for all down below and proof what Americans can achieve when they work together. Dante Chacon, 7 News.
Next on 7 Early News, 2 NRL coaches are under pressure after early season struggles, and a Hawthorn legend has been bestowed the game's highest honour. To sports news now, and Collingwood faces a number of injury concerns 9 days out from the AFL season restart. Key tall Ben Reid faces up to 6 weeks out for a calf injury. Darcy Moore's training load is being managed by the club, while Chris Mayne only walked after scans last week. West Coast are preparing to enter their Queensland hub, but they still don't know for how long.
We'd like it to be around 4 weeks, but still haven't got that clarity yet, which the AFL are working really hard to give us that, but that's probably giving the most anxiety at the moment.
North's Majak Daw may only miss several weeks with a pectoral injury.
Yeah, relief. I mean, obviously it's pretty well known that I haven't played for a long time, and even, I just miss playing footy.
Daw missed all of last year with serious hip and pelvic injuries. Hawthorn patriarch John Kennedy Sr. has become the 29th legend inducted into the AFL's Hall of Fame. Kennedy is regarded as a key architect for the Hawks becoming the most successful club over the past 50 years, captaining the club and coaching its first 3 premierships. He's the grandfather of Swans co-captain Josh Kennedy. St Kilda champion Lenny Hayes was also inducted into the Hall of Fame. The pressure is building on winless NRL coaches Paul McGregor and Dean Pay. The Dragons have won just twice in their past 13 games, both against the Titans last year. This season, the Bulldogs have scored just 24 points in 3 losses, but Kieran Foran's comeback can spark them.
We all need to do a better job than what we're doing. Everyone that's involved with.
The NRL admits the system for cardboard cutout crowds needs reviewing after a photo of British serial killer Dr. Harold Shipman made it through for the Panthers Knights game. And the Kangaroos' Ashes tour against England, set for later this year, has been cancelled due to the coronavirus pandemic. They hope to hold it in 2022 instead. Steve Smith says he'll be ready to play cricket again when given the green light after starting his official pre-season with the Blues yesterday. The usually obsessive Smith has barely touched a bat during the entire COVID shutdown.
There's just so much going on in the world right now that, cricket kind of seems a little bit irrelevant.
Smith says he hopes the T20 World Cup isn't sacrificed for the Indian Premier League. He'll trust medical advice with hopes a one-day tour to England can still go ahead in September. Plans for the biggest shake-up in the history of Melbourne's Spring Racing Carnival have been slammed by key stakeholders. The Victorian Owners and Trainers Associations have condemned the draft to move the Caulfield Cup to late November after the Melbourne Cup, claiming it would ruin the national racing calendar. But it has received the support of champion trainer Lee Friedman. Here's what he had to say.
I think if they knock back doing any sort of change this year, it would be a mistake. I think it's just the right time to do it.
Traditionally, the Caulfield Cup is a key lead-up race for the Melbourne Cup. Next on 7 Early News, a closer look at how the weather's shaping up in your part of the country. In China, 3 panda cubs who were born during the pandemic have celebrated their first Children's Day. It wasn't a raging party though. The adorable cubs were content to just roll around in their crib, looking pretty flat out, before stopping for the occasional nap. The 3 cubs, who were all born in March, are all healthy and growing well. A pandemic story, just what we need. Taking a look at the weather around the country, unstable winds in the wake of a low and front will bring showers and light highland snow to parts of New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania. Onshore winds will maintain showers over southern South Australia and eastern Arnhem Land. High pressure over the remainder of the country will keep skies dry and mostly clear. Around the capitals for you now, sunny in Brisbane and 21 degrees, a possible shower in Sydney with a top of 17, partly cloudy in Canberra, a shower or 2 in Melbourne and 15 degrees, a shower or 2 in Hobart and Adelaide, partly cloudy in Perth with a top of 22, and sunny in Darwin and 33 degrees. And that's 7 early news for this Tuesday the 2nd of June. I'm Edwina Bartholomew. Now it's time for Sunrise with Koshi and Sam.
Developing now, mayhem in America, race riots, firing